We just talked about the aggregate supply curve, and in particular the long run aggregate supply curve. And the aggregate supply curve is the quantity of goods and services, real GDP, that firms produce at various price levels. At a given price level, how much would they choose to produce? And we kind of walked through a number of things that would be going on here, really taking us back to what actually causes real long-term GDP growth. And we were kind of talking about technology, we were talking about the production function, and then thinking through all the things that in the long run might actually shift the long-run aggregate supply curve, what might actually induce firms to produce more goods, right? And then by therefore increasing the real GDP in the economy. And we had kind of left off saying that it really depends on the time horizon. So the long-run aggregate supply curve, that probably makes sense because we've mostly been thinking about the economy in these terms. But what we want to think through is there a difference in the short run? So I'm going to bring this down here real quick, give us ourselves a little bit more space to work with this. And when we're looking at the short-run aggregate supply curve, what we're specifically going to be looking at why it might slope upwards in the short run. So we know that when we're looking at this, I'll just kind of draw it back out so we can take a look at this. We know that on the x-axis we've got we've got y, or we have real GDP, real output within the economy, and on the y-axis we're looking at the price level, kind of the nominal price level here. And so we've been looking at it, we had kind of said before that the long-run aggregate supply curve, and I'll mark that as long-run LRAS, that might be a vertical line here. And this is also sometimes discussed, or it's sometimes also said as the natural level of output, right? Kind of like what is expected, right? So this is kind of expected output. Expected output. And I'll just list that there because, or like I said, you might also see this as natural level of output. And I'm just trying to mark some of these things that you come across in different textbooks or in different terms in economics or in business. What we want to now think about is what's actually going on in the short run. So in the short run, there's two main theories that kind of explain why instead the short run aggregate supply curve might kind of have an upward slope. Why it might look like this. And I'll say the short run aggregate supply. We'll kind of use those terminologies to differentiate the two. The first one we want to talk about, and I'll just highlight before we jump into this, that we're really trying to think about this from the firms and the total economy, right? The kind of total firm production level. We're trying to think about what might induce them to produce, right? In essence, to produce more as the price level increases. So a couple theories here. The first one is the sticky wage theory, and this is the most common one in economics. This is really, we've kind of come into contact with this throughout economics when we've been thinking about this. Sticky wage theory is really saying that nominal wages are slow, right, or they're sticky. And I'll just kind of write this out as we're going. That the nominal wages that you pay your employees are slow to adjust. And particularly that they're slow, right, or sticky to adjust to changes in the economy. So let's say that there's some sort of change in the economy that increases the price level. In fact, let's be a little more specific here. So let's say that you run a business. And you're running this business, you have 5 employees, and they're all under a 2-year contract. And you're paying them, let's say you're paying them like $5,000 per month. So you run a business, right? You're a business owner. Right? You have 5 employees. And you're paying them each $5,000 per month, kind of simplified here. And let's say in further, you have them signed to a 2-year contract, right? So you basically are working with them 2-year contract here. And a lot of employees work under some sort of contract. Maybe it's not 2 years, maybe it's 1 year. I have previously worked under a 2-year contract before. and where my income level was basically set with maybe a kind of increase in income from the first year to the second year, but basically expectations were already set. You might see this pretty commonly with a 1-year contract, or you might even have employees that don't have a contract at all, but maybe they also don't have a review coming up or something like that. So it's very unlikely, right? They have no expectation that their salary would be increasing as well. So there's a number of ways you could think about this, just kind of looking at the most simplistic way. So let's say you've got all of this, and then let's say that there's some sort of unexpected change in the economy where the general price level increases, right? It goes up, and like I said, this might be unexpected. So what I want to think through is what actually happens here. So let's even put numbers to this. Let's say that you sell your product at $100 per unit, right? And as a result of this increase in the price level, you're now able to sell your product at $110 per unit, right? And let's say even if all of your other prices increase, so all of your other input prices increase for your business, the one thing that is staying constant, we know is one of the biggest components of prices for a business, is the employee prices, right? This isn't changing. This is kind of nominal. It's not moving at all with the price level. It's sticky, it's slow. You are currently under the contract. And so what is actually happening here? Well, in essence, your labor expense has stayed constant. And as a result of this, your business is now more profitable, right? You are now able to supply more. What happens if your business is more profitable? So I'll just kind of list this out here. We've got more profitable business. And the business is more profitable specifically in the short run, right? It's as a result of these sticky wages. So you have a more profitable business right now. What are you likely to do? Well, you are likely to try to supply more goods, right? The fact that you are more profitable is going to increase your willingness to sell, right? And so this should increase your sales. It should increase your desire to sell goods. It should increase basically how many of the goods you are supplying, and this then should increase, right? So sales should increase, and generally within the economy, that would mean that output is increasing as well, that we would see an increase in Y. And so what happens? We have a general price level increase, the price level increases, and it would result, as a result of these sticky wages making your business more profitable in the short run, it would result in a higher output for the entire economy, if this is kind of happening generally across the businesses in the economy. This is the relationship that we're kind of seeing here, that price levels would increase, and as a result of price levels increasing in the short run because of these sticky wages, right, or something along this line, we would see increases in real GDP in the short run. It's kind of a second way of thinking about this, which is the sticky price theory. And I'll say, this one is probably, the sticky wage theory is probably the most common in economics. This is the way I think that most of us can kind of justify the increase in the short-run aggregate supply curve. The sticky price theory starts getting into some other ways that we can think about this that I think are creative and useful, but maybe a little, they start to get a little more confusing, or maybe it's easier to poke some holes into these theories here. So the sticky price theory is very similar here. The only difference is what we're saying is that we might have nominal prices, right? We might have nominal prices, or you might have prices of your goods that are slow to adjust. They're slow to adjust to changes in the economy. So let's kind of go through this same example that we had before. Let's say that you're a business owner, right? So you're a business owner here, and you have previously advertised your prices of your product in an industry brochure last month. So let's say that you advertised your prices, and we'll use kind of a different example than this so we don't get confused here. Let's say you advertised your prices at, let's say, $250 per unit, and you did this in some sort of brochure, and you want to continue to honor the prices that were listed in that brochure. But what is happening in the economy? Well, we might actually see that there's an unexpected increase in the general price level. So let's kind of stick with this same type of example. We've got the general, if I can spell this out here, general price level. increases. And I'll also mark that as unexpected, right? Unexpectedly. So how do we kind of think through how this might actually give us a increase, kind of an upward sloping short run aggregate supply curve? Well, here's kind of the logic. Your costs are increasing as a result. So like if we think about your costs, right, they increase for units of production, right, inputs for your production. But you continue to honor the brochure price. So one of the things that we can think about here is that if the general price level is increasing, this might also mean that your competitor prices are increasing. In the short run, right, in kind of this temporary short run period, you are basically, right, you are more competitively priced. Your prices are kind of stuck because you have chosen to continue to honor the continue to honor the brochure prices, even though your competitors are charging more for the same type of product. As a result of that, right, if you are basically competitive in your prices, then we should see, right, your price is more competitive, and we should see a temporary increase in sales as a result of this. And that temporary increase in sales, the same way that we think about here, would have a temporary increase in output for the economy. Now, here's where I think that this one gets a little tricky, right? If we think that your prices, so what are the two things that are going on here? So one, this is a good thing, right? Your prices are relatively better than your competitor prices. However, if the price level is increasing, that means that all of your input prices are increasing as well. So I don't know, the steel that you use, or the let's say, right, like the factory that you use, or transportation costs. If you're in the transportation business and the gasoline prices are increasing, right? Obviously, all of these increases in the general price level would be decreasing your profitability because your prices are staying the same. And if your profitability is if your profitability is decreasing, then you would probably, instead of increasing sales, you might be more willing to, right, you might be more interested in decreasing sales. You might be seeing some decreasing sales because you're going to sit there and say, well, this business is becoming a little less profitable. I'm a little concerned about what's going on in the economy. I'm going to hold back a little bit. And so you might see the sticky price theory, I think sometimes you can see it in a number of different ways. So right here what we're looking at is kind of the reasoning, the theory that would kind of the step-by-step that would cause us to think that the short-run aggregate supply curve might slope upwards. I think it's a decent theory. I think it's good for thinking about this. Generally in economics, when we're thinking about why the short-run aggregate supply curve would increase, I think that the sticky wage theory makes the most sense. I think that this is something that we see across the economy. You don't have kind of these dual incentives that you might have down here in a sticky price theory, even though we do know that sticky prices exist within the economy. We know that does happen, that you do print a price and that you will honor a price even after conditions in the economy change. I think that there's dual incentives here, right? There's competing incentives down here. And so generally when we're talking about the aggregate supply and aggregate demand model, we will mostly be talking about the sticky wage theory. But I wanted to walk through both so that when you come into contact with them, you can kind of explain it and think through why either of them might show a increase or might show an upward slope, a positive relationship between price level and real GDP for aggregate supply in the short run.